I knew we were in trouble the moment Dr. Kessler asked if I felt safe expressing vulnerability in our marriage. It wasn't the question itself, it was the look my wife, Hannah, gave me as he said it. Like she was watching a trap close. I said, "Yeah, I think so, because that's what you say when you're trying to fix things. You go along. You don't accuse, you don't deflect. You listen, nod, open up. You try." But Hannah smiled. Just a little. Like she'd scored a point. That was our first session. I remember the way the clock ticked in that quiet office, how the walls were this dull, muted gray, like a waiting room for something worse. Dr. Kessler had this smooth, measured voice. The kind that makes you feel like you're already on the defensive no matter what you say. He wore sweaters with elbow patches and never laughed, not even when I tried to lighten things. Especially not then. Week after week, I showed up. I talked. I owned my mistakes. I wasn't perfect, I could be distant, distracted. I knew that. I'd been putting too much time into work, missing dinners, forgetting anniversaries. I admitted all of that. But it didn't matter. Somehow, everything circled back to me being emotionally unavailable, too logic-driven, or resistant to empathy. Those were Kessler's words. Always clinical, always precise. And Hannah just sat there, hands folded neatly in her lap, nodding like she already knew. At home, we were civil, polite. Like coworkers. We shared a house, a schedule, meals. But not much else. There was no screaming, no chaos. Just distance. Like everything between us had been slowly packed into boxes and moved to some other part of the house where I couldn't reach it. Then, one night after a session, she said something that stuck. "I think we're finally getting somewhere," she said over dinner, pushing peas around on her plate. I asked what she meant. "You're starting to admit how much damage you've caused. That's the first step." She said it without malice. Just, calm. Like she was reading from a guidebook. I stared at her. "Is that what this is about? Damage?" She didn't answer. Just got up, took her plate to the sink, and left the room. That was the night I started to feel it, the unease, the itch in the back of my mind. Like something wasn't right. Not just in our marriage, but in the process. In therapy. In the setup. Because it started feeling like one. The first real crack came about 6 months in. I showed up 10 minutes early to our Tuesday session, walked into the waiting area, and overheard my name. I paused just inside the door. The receptionist was gone, and the place was empty except for muffled voices from behind Kessler's office door. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. But I heard Hannah say, "Don't forget to mention the thing about the phone calls. That part matters." And Kessler responded, "Of course. It fits the pattern we've been establishing." The pattern. That word hit me in the chest. I stepped back outside, paced in the parking lot, then came in again at exactly 2 o'clock like nothing had happened. Neither of them looked surprised to see me. No one mentioned the phone calls. No one mentioned anything I'd heard. But that session felt different. The questions were more pointed. The tone colder. Dr. Kessler asked, "Why do you think Hannah hesitates to share with you?" I said, "Because maybe she's not being honest." He scribbled something down. "Defensiveness," he murmured. After that, I started recording the sessions on my phone. Not for evidence, I didn't know what I was even looking for. But something told me I'd want them later. 2 weeks later, I came home from work and found Hannah in the guest room, sitting at her laptop, headphones in, typing rapidly. She didn't see me. I watched her screen from the hallway. She had a document open titled, "Session Notes, Evidence Log." It wasn't a journal. It wasn't about feelings. It was a catalog. Each entry started with a date and a short quote from me, taken out of context. Things I'd said in the middle of emotionally raw conversations, cut down to make me sound cold or angry. January 3rd, he said he feels nothing when I cry. I'd said that after explaining I'd become numb from our constant arguments. The whole sentence had been, "Sometimes I feel like I've gone numb when you cry, and it scares me." But that wasn't what she wrote. I backed away without making a sound. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed to be sure. I needed more. So I looked up Dr. Kessler. His online presence was sparse, LinkedIn, some academic papers, a couple conference photos. But I found something buried in an old alumni magazine from his undergrad years. A photo of a student psychology group. Dr. Kessler. And next to him, arm around his shoulder, laughing into the camera, Hannah. Same last name as now, before she married me. The caption read, "Founding Members, Psychology Peer Mentors Program, class of '09. They'd known each other for years. She never told me. I kept scrolling, heart pounding, and found an old blog post, one of those "Where Are They Now" features. It mentioned Dr. Kessler and his early practice. He'd started it with a friend. Dr. H. Kessler and H. Jensen have worked closely for over a decade on trauma-informed care and relational frameworks. Hannah's maiden name was Jensen. My stomach dropped. That night, I listened to all the recordings again. I paid attention to the rhythm of the conversations, how they circled, tightened, cornered me. It was a dance. A setup. Everything I said that was remotely emotional got reframed as instability. Any pushback became avoidance. Every concession was treated as guilt. And Hannah? She was always calm, measured, like she was reading from a script. Because she was. This wasn't therapy. It was a performance. And I was the exhibit. I couldn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room in the dark, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, trying to make sense of what I'd found. My wife and our therapist, lifelong friends, colleagues, co-authors, practically. And I'd walked straight into their office every Tuesday for 6 months and handed them everything they needed. Hannah didn't even try to hide it anymore. The next morning, she was back at her laptop in the guest room, typing with the same quiet intensity. I stood in the doorway. "What are you working on?" I asked. She didn't look up. "Just organizing my thoughts. Session notes." She paused. A slight flicker in her eyes. "That's part of it." I nodded. "You knew Kessler before we started seeing him?" Still no eye contact. "Yes." "How long?" She finally looked up. "We went to school together. He's someone I trust." "You didn't think that was relevant to tell me?" "It's not like I was hiding it. You never asked." That response, it knocked the wind out of me. Not because it was surprising, but because of how casually she delivered it. Like I was overreacting for even noticing. "I heard you," I said. "In his office. Telling him what to say." She closed the laptop. "If you're going to start twisting things, no twisting." I heard it. Silence stretched between us. She didn't deny it. Didn't apologize. Instead, she said, "You're making this harder than it has to be." And with that, she walked past me. The next session was the first time I didn't speak. I sat in the chair across from Kessler, arms crossed, just listening. He still tried to guide the conversation like normal, asked Hannah how she was feeling, asked if anything had escalated at home. I gave him nothing. At one point, he looked at me and said, "Your silence can be interpreted as a form of control." That got a reaction. I laughed. Just once. A sharp exhale through my nose. "Is that what this is?" I asked. "Control." He blinked. "It's a pattern that's emerged. We've discussed it before." "A pattern," I repeated. "Right. One you and Hannah planned out over coffee a decade ago." His expression didn't change, but I saw it, just a flash, behind the eyes. He hadn't expected me to say that. "We maintain professional boundaries," he said evenly. I turned to Hannah. "You want to tell him what's in that document on your laptop?" Her jaw tightened. "I don't have to explain myself to you." "No, you don't," I said, standing up. "But you might want to explain it to a real therapist. Or a judge." Kessler calmly scribbled something in his notes. "Leaving in the middle of a session," he said aloud, "can also be indicative of," but I was already walking out the door. I spent the next week researching attorneys. Not divorce lawyers, at least not yet. I wanted someone with experience in false documentation, psychological manipulation, maybe even malpractice. I found a guy named Rollins who specialized in high-conflict domestic situations. Older, quiet, sharp. When I told him what had been happening, he didn't look surprised. "This kind of thing's not unheard of," he said. "Especially when there's property involved, or reputations. What you described sounds like what we call evidence grooming." Evidence grooming? Fabricating a history. Paper trail therapy. They build a psychological narrative that makes one party look like the aggressor. Sometimes it's subtle. Sometimes it's a trap. He leaned back in his chair. "You were in a trap." I gave him the recordings. The blog post. The alumni magazine photo. He nodded slowly as he scanned through the files. "She's good," he said. "Polished. If you hadn't caught it early, she might have buried you." "Why?" I asked. "What's the point?" He didn't answer right away. Then, control, reputation, maybe guilt. Some people rewrite the past so they can live with their decisions. Others do it to win. "And what do I do now?" "You document everything. And you stop reacting. So that's what I did. At home, I went quiet, calm. Every move I made carefully. Every conversation, I recorded, where legal, of course. I even started keeping a journal. It wasn't about revenge. It was about clarity. Because now I saw everything differently. I saw how she picked fights and then retreated, watching how I responded. I saw how she asked leading questions like, "Do you even care how I feel?" while wearing a microphone under her shirt. I found it tucked into her bra one morning, battery blinking red. I saw how every neutral comment from me was met with emotional escalation. She wasn't reacting to me, she was creating scenes. And those scenes were being documented. For someone. It came to a head on a Friday night. We were in the kitchen. I was washing dishes. She was leaning against the counter, arms crossed. "You're being cold again," she said. "I'm tired," I replied. "Long week. Emotionally unavailable," she muttered. As usual. I didn't respond. She stepped closer. "Say something. Anything. I don't think this is a productive conversation." "Wow," she said. "You sound just like your father." That hit harder than I expected. She knew how I felt about him, how I'd sworn never to repeat his mistakes. She waited, eyes locked on mine, daring me to react. I dried my hands slowly and walked out of the room. That night, she texted Kessler. I saw the message pop up on her phone screen while it was charging in the hallway. "He's withdrawing again." Tonight he stonewalled and walked away. Getting worse. Underneath it, another message from a contact labeled SJ Legal Consultant. Document. Stay calm. Keep the pattern consistent. That was the moment I knew. Not suspected. Not wondered. Knew. They weren't trying to fix anything. They were building a case. And I had been cooperating. I stopped trying to fix the marriage after that night. Not because I didn't love her. God, that was the worst part, I still did. Or maybe I loved who I thought she was. Either way, I had to let go of the idea that this could be salvaged with honesty. With effort. Because it was never about healing. It was about control, and narrative, and winning. And I was done playing along. I backed up every message, every call log, every file on her laptop that I could access. Screenshots, exports, secure cloud storage. I copied the message threads between her and SJ Legal Consultant, while she was in the shower. Her conversations with Kessler, too. She'd been sloppy. Maybe overconfident. She didn't know I knew. That was the one edge I had left. Rollins helped me find a forensic psych expert, a quiet woman named Dr. Liao who used to work in courtroom evaluation. She reviewed the therapy recordings, my journal, the texts. I sat across from her while she made notes, the only sound in the room the scratching of her pen. "This is carefully curated emotional documentation," she said finally. "She's not reacting to your behavior. She's rehearsing her own." She turned a page. "This line, 'He refused to engage when I was vulnerable,' is in 3 separate sessions. Same wording. Scripted," I said. "Yes. And corroborated by a therapist who has a personal history with her. If this ever made it to court, they'd claim it as objective clinical observation. But now." She tapped the edge of the printout. "Now it looks like collusion." At home, Hannah started ramping things up. She began leaving her laptop open on purpose. I'd come into the room and see highlighted phrases on the screen: emotional stonewalling, nonverbal aggression, gaslighting tendencies. Like she wanted me to know what she was preparing. She started repeating herself more. Baiting me. "You're not present. You don't care. You're trying to make me feel crazy." Every time, I stayed calm. I didn't correct her, didn't defend myself. I just observed. It drove her nuts. Eventually, she accused me of checking out emotionally, and I said something I hadn't before. "I think we should take a break. Spend time apart." She froze. "You're leaving?" "No. Just space. That's all." It was the only thing she hadn't prepared for, me leaving on my own terms. I moved into a short-term rental 2 towns over, signed a lease in my name only. Gave her the address but not the keys. Rollins said it was the right move. The more space you give her, the clearer her strategy becomes. She can't manipulate what she can't reach. And sure enough, within 2 days, she filed. Officially, it was a petition for separation with mediation, citing emotional neglect, communication breakdown, and mental distress due to pattern controlling behavior. It read like a textbook. Because it was. I sent it straight to Rollins. He reviewed it with Liao. Together, they built a counterfile. The confrontation came during mediation. 3 weeks after I moved out, we met in a neutral office, glass walls, quiet hallways, polite smiles hiding razor-sharp intentions. Hannah sat across from me, calm and professional, flanked by a lawyer who looked like she'd memorized every page of Hannah's notes. She spoke first. "There's been a clear history of emotional manipulation," she said, flipping through her binder. "My client has spent months in therapeutic work identifying and documenting these patterns, with the support of a licensed professional." Rollins leaned forward. "Yes. We've reviewed those notes." A pause. He slid a folder across the table. "These recordings show your client coaching that same licensed professional during private conversations. We have dates, transcripts, metadata. We also have correspondence between her and a third-party legal consultant advising her on how to frame the sessions for a custody-free, asset-driven separation." Her attorney blinked. For the first time, Hannah's composure cracked, just slightly. Her lips parted. She glanced at me. I didn't look away. Rollins kept going. Calm, slow. This wasn't therapy. It was entrapment. They called for a break. In the hallway, Hannah followed me. I could hear her heels behind me, sharp against the tile. "You think you've won something?" she hissed. I turned to her. I didn't want to win. I wanted honesty. She looked at me, her face hard. "You were impossible to reach. I had to make you see." "No," I said. "You had to make it look like you were right. That's not the same thing." Silence stretched between us. "I did what I had to do," she said quietly. "Yeah," I replied. "So did I." The fallout wasn't nuclear. It was clinical, methodical. She withdrew the initial filing. Her lawyer, now aware of the exposure risk, recommended mediation under entirely new terms. Kessler, when pressed for full disclosure of his prior relationship with Hannah, resigned his license to avoid a malpractice review. There was no dramatic trial. No public scandal. Just two people sitting at a table, signing a life away, line by line. We split assets. She kept the house. I kept my dignity. And the recordings. I don't date now. Not yet. People ask if I'm bitter, if I'm angry. I'm not. I'm awake. I know what it feels like to be used as a character in someone else's story. To watch your intentions twisted and rewritten in real time. But I also know I made it out before I lost myself completely. That's worth something. Some mornings I still replay those sessions. Not out of spite. Out of clarity. They remind me of who I was becoming, and what it took to stop. This wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was the end of a performance. And for the first time in a long time, I'm not playing anyone else's part. The final meeting was quiet. We sat across from each other in a beige conference room downtown, final paperwork in a manila folder between us. No attorneys. No therapists. Just signatures. Clean. Cold. Permanent. She wore the same navy blazer she always wore to Kessler's office. It looked different now, less polished, more like armor. She kept her hands folded, not making eye contact. I watched her, waiting. I don't know what for. Regret? An apology? Something human. Nothing came. So I said what I'd been holding in since the beginning. "You never really wanted to fix this. You just wanted the paper trail." She blinked, once, slowly. "I wanted safety." "No," I said. "You wanted to be right." Her jaw tightened, but she didn't answer. We signed. And that was that. There was no celebration after. No relief. Just this strange stillness, like the air after a storm when everything's been uprooted but nothing's settled. I walked out of that building and stood on the sidewalk for a long time. People passed around me like I didn't exist. It felt fitting. She got what she wanted, a quiet, clean exit where she looked reasonable. Calm. Victimized, but composed. What she didn't get was control. Because I didn't give her the reaction she'd spent a year orchestrating. I didn't explode. I didn't collapse. I didn't play the part. A few weeks later, I got a letter. No return address, handwritten in a careful script I recognized immediately. Hannah. I stared at it for a while before opening it, thought about throwing it out, burning it, framing it. But curiosity wins, doesn't it? The letter was short. I never planned for it to go that far. I thought if you saw the damage, you'd change. But then it stopped being about us. And I couldn't stop the train once it started. I just wanted a record. Something to make sense of it all. I know you saw through it. I guess part of me wanted you to. I'm sorry. I read it 3 times. Then I folded it back up and put it in a drawer. I don't hate her. I don't even know if she meant to do what she did at first. Maybe it started as self-preservation and became something else, something more dangerous. But intention doesn't erase impact. And healing doesn't begin with a perfectly composed apology at the finish line. It begins the moment you realize no one's coming to save you. Not a therapist. Not a partner. Not even yourself from a year ago. Just you. Now. Making a choice. I kept going to therapy, with someone new. Someone real. I told her everything. The false narrative. The recording sessions. The betrayal. I told her how it made me question my own memory, my own judgment. You start wondering if maybe you are the person they say you are, I told her. Because if you weren't, why would they work so hard to prove it? She nodded slowly. You've been gaslit. But the fact that you asked those questions, and kept asking them, is why you found the truth. Still feels like I lost, I said. You lost something, yes. But not yourself. There was one final thing. A folder on my computer I hadn't opened since the day I moved out. Recordings. Notes. Screenshots. Evidence. I opened it, looked at the files. Listened to a few clips. My voice, cautious. Hesitant. Tired. Hannah's voice, steady. Confident. Almost kind. Kessler, guiding the conversation. Steering it. Making my reality sound like pathology. I hovered over the folder. Right-clicked. Considered deleting it. But I didn't. Not out of bitterness. Not even out of fear. I kept it as a reminder. Because sometimes the stories that get written about us aren't true. And when that happens, you have to write your own. So here it is. Not for pity. Not for justice. But for anyone who's ever sat across from someone they loved, telling the truth, and realizing it was already too late. For anyone who was made to feel like they were crazy just for asking questions. For anyone who woke up one day and realized the person they trusted most was documenting their downfall like a science project. I know what it's like to be studied, not understood. I know what it's like to love someone who's already rewritten the ending. But I also know what it means to walk away. Not to escape, but to survive.